Hello, and welcome to a look at Vigilante for the Amiga, a game that was released by US Gold. Vigilante was originally an arcade game by Iron Corp, and of course, Iron Corp is most likely most famous for the game R-Type, but as should be quite obvious from the video footage, Iron also released other game types besides shooters, and this is one such game. Now, I've already done coverage of this game for the Commodore 64, but for certain games, while I do make dual version videos at times, I by and large try to keep them separately so they are easier to look up if people are looking for a specific version of a specific game. The plot. Your girlfriend has been kidnapped by a gang and you decide that you won't let that go unpunished. So of course you go out on the streets and try to follow the trail of the gang, and by following the trail of the gang you end up fighting hundreds of gang members, must be some gang, using your trusty fists and feet. Because of course our hero is a very honorable combatant, so he will not refrain to using weapons of any kind. Unfortunately for him, his opponents don't have issues trying to smack him in the face with nunchakus or shoot him or stab him, so he is at a certain disadvantage. You can pick up nunchakus from time to time, but the range of said weapon is so hilariously short, so you don't benefit much from it. The main benefit is that opponents that requires multiple hits will require a fewer multiple hits in order to go down. You will be moving from left to right, dodging bullets, trying to beat up the bad guys without getting beat up yourself, which of course is very common for games of this type. Once you have walked enough to the right, you will find that you bump into a bad guy who's better than the other bad guys and requires a few more punches and kicks in order to go down. Once you have done that, you will exit the level. Not entirely to right, so you will need to move to the exit point of the level, which I discovered the hard way. From a graphical point of view, the game doesn't look too bad actually. It's not the best looking Amiga game ever made, but by and large I'm not unhappy with the graphics as such. Some of it is very, very coarse, but I don't have any complaints as such. The sound effects are okay, and the music, I know it's the same music, it's a variation of the arcade theme, and I've always thought that the music is oddly misplaced. It's not bad, it's just odd. It feels like it needs a bit of oomph in the sound department. We have beaten level 1 and we move on to level 2, the junkyard, which in the Commodore 64 version featured motorcyclists, but that is not the case in this version, and that is reserved for the next level. The gameplay is as you see, beat up bad guys, get to the boss, beat up the boss, progress. It doesn't get much more basic than that, but what is very, very noticeable in the Amiga version is the fact that you can only have 2 enemies at the screen at any given time, but you will basically always have 2 enemies on the screen, which means that there's an awful lot of fighting. Because of the pacing of the game, it makes you end up in fight situations much more often than you will necessarily want to, and it becomes incredibly tedious to just try to dispose of enemies and defeat them one at a time. And thankfully they do back away when you bump into the boss, but there's just far too much fighting in this fighting game. I know that sounds a bit contradictory, but there's nothing exciting about the fighting. It just feels incredibly tedious because you're just walking from left to right and punching and kicking and jump kicking and getting beaten to a pulp. And the music is not bad, but it doesn't detract enough from the boredom of beating people senseless. Don't do that at home, by the way. But my bigger gripe with this game is that certain enemies just seem to be incredibly durable. I don't know whether you're actually not hitting them, but when you get up against 2 or 3 enemies, or 2 enemies, you will only face 2 enemies at any given time, and they are very, very durable, and one of them has a knife. Even if you go for the one with the knife, you are going to get stabbed continuously before you can take anyone down. And if you go for the one with the knife, the other guy is going to punch you, kick you, stomp you, whatever else he's doing, while you are trying to get rid of the one doing the most damage to you. And yeah, you can see that you can go through your health bars very, very quickly. Getting to the end of level 2 boss, which are twins, were quite passive, and they are quite capable of moving out of your field of action. This is a hard stop on the screen. They can jump over by the van where you can't touch them, which is incredibly stupid design. This should never be the case. You should never be facing enemies that you cannot engage in a fighting game. I think that's a bit of a flaw. But the whole thing is that there's very, very little enjoyment to be had with this game. Moving on to the bridge levels, where we finally get the motorcyclists and get to deal with them. And they're supposed to be these tough bikers on motorcycles, but for some reason they make me think of grannies on their scooters. Maybe it's just me. Of course, the motorcycles blowing up can't just be a graphical effect. No, it has to have some sort of implication. So if you are near a motorcycle when it blows up, you take significant amounts of damage, just adding to the fun. All things considered, the game is actually not bad as such. I played worse, played a lot worse. But it is incredibly tedious and doesn't feel particularly rewarding to play. There's nothing exciting about it. There's nothing that remotely encourages you to play it again and again and again, unless you have some morbid curiosity as to how the game, I wouldn't call it a story, but how the plot unfolds. On that note, nah, not a fan. Thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye.